Hello readers by eyes and by ears, this is Mari-chan and welcome to my channel. Guess what? Today we are starting a new danme. And what is it called? Well, if you clicked on this video, then you definitely know. But it's The Imperial Uncle by Feng Gua Guo, translated by Danglars. And I'm very excited because we are moving back into ancient times. So normally I do not do this, but I have decided that I am going to read the summary for you all before we begin the first chapter. That way you all can have a little bit of an idea of what we are digging into, and so I can know as well, because I have no idea. I am going in here blind, just like you guys. So anyway, I am going to read that. And like I said, we are still just going to take this entire month slow. So the videos aren't going to be extremely long unless I just feel the gusto or something like that. But we're just going to relax. So here is the summary. Prince Huai, uncle to the young emperor, is the chief of all poisons, the evil manipulator, the greatest of malignant tumors. Or so people say. But no matter. The imperial uncle has a plan. He will sabotage the conspiracy against the throne and make his loyalty known to all. His plan will wipe his reputation clean and put an end to the rumors. Maybe then Prince Huai can start mending the other facets of his life. Perhaps he can even be worthy of the paragon of virtue he yearns for. Alrighty, that's the summary. So let's get started, shall we? Enjoy. Chapter 1. I am an imperial uncle, an uncle to the emperor. However, I am not a direct uncle, but a cousin once removed. My father was brother to Mingzong, the Tongyi emperor, grandfather of the present emperor. I am only His Majesty's cousin uncle. Footnote number 1. Tongyi Emperor, historically, Chinese emperor went by a variety of names and titles. Here, Mingzong is a temple name, a posthumous honor, while Tongyi is the name for the period of the emperor's rule. In dynasties where a single era name covered an emperor's entire rule, like the fictional dynasty in this novel, the emperor was known by that era name during his rule and often after death. But with the late emperor's own brothers having long since died off, I, a mere cousin uncle, have become an uncle dearer than any true uncle. Those mawkish words, dearer than any true uncle, were not spoken by me, but by the Empress Dowager. The first time she spoke these words, the emperor had yet to ascend the throne. The late emperor was newly deceased, red-eyed and dressed in her mourning garb. She said to me, "Chhengjun, though you are the late emperor's cousin, in my heart, I have always seen you as an uncle. You are Qizhe's dearest uncle, dearer than any true uncle." At the time, I was deep in mourning for the late emperor, and her words chilled me. It was no surprise when she added at once, "Going forward, Qizhe will have to rely on your help, Chhengjun. I request that favor of you now." Afterward, my mother summarized the situation perfectly. She said, "When those close to the throne have a use for you, you are dearer than anything. When they have no use for you, they want you to hurry up and die." When the emperor's personal reign had begun and his throne was as fast as it had been cast in molten iron, I met the Empress Dowager on occasion in my comings and goings at the imperial palace, and as she regarded me, she did appear to be willing me to go wait upon the late emperor as soon as possible. It seems that the late emperor and those close to him once saw my father in the same light. After so many years of anticipation, the late emperor had at last lived to see my father interred. I thought that he should have been able to die in peace, his burden lifted. But the misfortunes of one generation came down to the next. The late emperor's wife and son inherited his ways and went on suspecting me. This would not end until I, too, was in my coffin. An idle observer once produced a summation of the present imperial court's 3 great malignant tumors. Wang Qin's greed is too great for the treasury to slake. Yuan Tong ignores his post and toils for his faction's sake. And then the manipulative Prince Huai, chief of all poisons, comes with his treachery to make the throne quake. This chief of all poisons, this evil manipulator, this greatest of malignant tumors, refers to none other than me, Prince Huai, Chhengjun. Faced with this view, I can only profess myself helpless. Actually, I have always been very dutiful and loyal. I have neither the intent to seize power nor the desire to covet the throne. I assert that no other minister of this court surpasses me in loyalty. But the tragedy of it is that hardly anyone in the world believes in my loyalty. However, I have always been open to reason. In deference to reason, I will say that the greatest fault in causing others to doubt me lies with my father. I remember my mother often saying to me when I was young, "Your father is the greatest fool I have ever met." Then she would stroke my head and say, "You must not grow up to be like him." In the eyes of outsiders, my father was nowhere near foolish. He went into battle for the first time at 15 and became commander-in-chief at 17. Half his life was spent in the saddle, and the defeats he suffered were vanishingly few. But to my mother, and to myself once I was old enough to understand, my father was in fact very simple-minded. He was the Tongguang Emperor's youngest brother. He often recalled with ardent tears standing in his eyes how the Tongguang Emperor had loved and cared for him when he was young, taught him to read and write, tucked him in at night, dressed him in extra layers when it was cold, and he was willing to lay down his life to repay his imperial brother's kindness. But the Tongguang Emperor was frail and died young. My father had hardly any opportunity to repay him. After weeping bitterly in inconsolable grief, he resolved to extend his repayment to the Tongguang Emperor's son, the late Ying-chang Emperor, the current emperor's father. If there was an incident at the border, he immediately volunteered to set off. In political discussions at court, if he thought he could aid the government and the state in any way, he was sure to pour out his views, regularly becoming voluble and impassioned. His sincere advice often grated on the ear. He believed he was acting out of loyalty, but in the eyes of the emperor, he was attempting to make himself look good at His Majesty's expense. One calls this presumption. My mother once counseled him on this subject, but he wouldn't listen. He thought that she was being womanish. When heaven and earth bore witness to the unfaltering loyalty in his heart, when the sun and moon reflected it, how could his nephew, the emperor, fail to sense it? My mother was powerless. She could only watch him carry his foolishness through to the end. After my father died, his military authority was immediately ceded and evenly split among a number of important ministers. All I inherited was his title. I did not undertake a position in any court ministry. The present emperor has a number of other imperial cousin uncles apart from me, each holding the rank of prince, each with more power than Huai Manor. Regardless, for whatever reason, outsiders always think that Huai Manor must be in possession of some secret influence sufficient to overthrow the government. Just after the death of the late emperor, when the Empress Dowager spoke those mawkish words to me, I had no choice but to give her an empty promise. How was I to know that some of my older cousins and a number of important courtiers would hold a small conference that very night and bring me along? Grand Tutor Yuan Tang, who was still Imperial Chancellor at the time, said, "The nation cannot go without a ruler for a single day. Yet since His Majesty's passing, the throne has stood empty 2 days already. The Crown Prince, Qizhe, is still young. What say you, princes and assembled gentlemen?" When my turn came, I spoke honestly. It is right and proper for the Crown Prince to succeed to the throne. In the meantime, I will say irreverently that I have known His Highness Chee-juh since he was born. He has always been clever and quick-witted, generous and benevolent. Though he is still young, when he grows up, he is certain to be a wise ruler. While telling the truth, I also took the opportunity to flatter the future emperor. I thought that ought to improve my life going forward. The next day, Qizhe succeeded to the throne and became emperor. That night, the Empress Dowager summoned me to the palace. In the imperial study, she dismissed the attendants. Holding the emperor by the hand, she said, "Your Majesty, now that you are emperor, you must not forget your imperial uncle, Prince Huai's contributions. From now on, in matters of government, Prince Huai will certainly assist your Majesty." The Empress Dowager's gaze was pregnant with meaning. I wanted to explain that she must have misunderstood something, but I could not. This is how people are. The more you deny something to them, the more they believe it is the truth. Day by day, the secret influence of Huai manner waxed in others' imaginations, and especially in the imagination of the Empress Dowager. So up to today, it had been my honor to be the court's foremost scheming minister, a treacherous prince in the minds of the people throughout the nation. Today was the second day of the 4th month. The month and the day were both even, a propitious date according to the calendar, suitable for raising house beams, matrimony, bathing, and travel. I sat in my front hall. Also in the front hall were 2 guests, one Yuan-tang's son, Yuan-yu, the other a minor imperial censor recently promoted to the censorate. As one of the court's 3 great tumors, Yuan-tang was a tumor only slightly smaller than myself, and unlike me, his reputation was not unmerited. Just look at his son, Yuan-yu. In his early 20s, he already held 3 of 4 concurrent positions at court, among them supervisor of the imperial censorate. This brand new minor imperial censor was probably some years older than Yuan-yu, yet he had no choice but to treat him with utmost deference and allow himself to be dragged here to visit me. "Censor He is an exceedingly rare talent," Yuan-yu said to me soberly, "but he is still young and inexperienced. I hope your Highness Prince Huai will look after him." Then he turned with a smile to Censor He, who was on his best behavior and stiff as a coffin with it. "His Highness Prince Huai, you ought to know, is not merely His Majesty's uncle. He is also the imperial uncle dearest to His Majesty." I was numb to these words after so many years of hearing them. I gave the minor imperial censor a cordial smile. It was an exceedingly ordinary visit, or so it ought to have been. And then my princess barged in. Another nephew of mine, Chee-lee, the eldest son and heir of Prince Shou, once scolded me. "Imperial uncle, you're fine in every way, except that no matter what happens and when, you always think that all the justice in the world is on your side. Everything must always be someone else's fault, and you've been dreadfully wronged. This is an aggravating habit of yours." I have always thought he was wrong to say this. I didn't deserve it. I have always examined myself regularly. Whenever anything happens, I first try to find fault with myself, and it is only because I usually find nothing amiss in my own conduct that I go looking for faults with others. Just like this time, I looked at the princess, as ever examining my conscience. Had I truly done something to make her take such drastic action? After a brief period of self-examination, I found that I had done nothing wrong. In the years since the princess had married into Huai Manor, I had honored her, provided for her. If she wanted gold, I would never give her silver. If she wanted to wear silk, I would never dress her in satin. I had never said a harsh word to her, nor taken a concubine. So why? The princess's back was straight, her head held high, and her chest thrust out. She said, "Your Highness, I'm expecting. It's not yours, of course." The hall went silent. Censor He's face was white with shock. Yuan-yu snickered. The princess turned and pointed to a figure standing by the small door leading from the front hall to an inner room, bundled up like a zongzi dumpling wrapped in bamboo leaves. "I am not afraid to tell your Highness that the child in my belly is mine and his." Censor He looked desolate. Trembling, he climbed stiffly to his feet and made to leave. Yuan-yu tugged on his sleeve and forced him to sit down, while he himself went on watching with a smile. The princess looked at me as tears streamed down her face. "This is what I have done today," she said fiercely. "I wanted to say this out in the open. What is your Highness going to do to me?" She fixed on me a gaze like a knife. I wanted to tell you. It is you who drove me to this, Your Highness. It is you who drove me step by step to where I am today. I would rather die than continue to endure. I will fight to the death if I must in order to destroy your reputation." Her eyes were bright red, filled with a flesh-gnawing, bone-cutting hatred for me. "Your Highness, why will you not speak? Why do you not dare to reprimand me? Not dare to have me expelled? Because you don't have the gall? Because you owe me?" I heard a sip. It was Yun-yu drinking his tea. Holding his teacup, he continued to observe with relish. The princess took a step forward. She glared ferociously at me. "Because you're afraid the whole world will know that Prince Huai, Chuhng-Joo-in, is an impotent cut-sleeve." Footnote number 2, if you don't already know. Cut-sleeve, duan xiu, is slang for male homosexuality originating in accounts of the relationship between Emperor Ai of Han and Dong Xian. One story describes Emperor Ai cutting his sleeve to avoid disturbing Dong Xian, who had fallen asleep lying on it. History's most humiliating events were taking place at Huai Manor today. A teacup touched the table with a clatter. Yun-yu said, "Princess, let me speak fairly as an outsider. As far as impotence is concerned, you are bringing a false charge. His Highness Prince Huai has quite a few times gone with us to visit the streets of ill repute. Though he does have some preference for men, I and others can attest, along with those boys and girls at the brothels, that His Highness Prince Huai is quite accomplished in matters of intimacy. I assure you that no one has anything to say against him." The princess laughed savagely, rocking back and forth, her breath coming short. She pointed at me. "Do you know that you've ruined my life? I hate you, alive or dead. I won't let you get away with it. Make no mistake. Today I intend to create a scandal for outsiders to see. I want the whole world to know that Prince Huai is a cuckold." She pointed again at the zongzi next to the small door. Chuckling, she said, "Well, Your Highness, aren't you surprised to see who my lover is? How does Your Highness plan to punish us?" The zongzi slowly raised his head and looked at me with clear eyes. Pain pounded in my temples, making my head spin. I wanted to say to the princess, "You're wrong. I am not the prime culprit behind bringing about this scene here and now." The princess had been married to me for several years, and in fact, we had never had marital relations. But it wasn't because I didn't want to. It was because she was unwilling. The princess was the daughter of Li Yue, a minister famed for his loyalty. In a court polluted by 3 malignant tumors, Secretariat Director Li Yue was like a white pillar in a raging current of filth. The late emperor and the present Empress Dowager had relied heavily on him. In the end, he had overworked himself and died suddenly in his office at the age of 46. While still in the first flush of youth, when I reached the age to marry, the Empress Dowager feared that I would marry Wang Qing's or Yun Tang's daughter, combining 2 great tumors into one, so she personally arranged to betroth Li Yue's daughter to me, so that Li Yue could act as a check on me. I was quite pleased to marry her. Young Mistress Li was renowned throughout the capital. She was said to be strikingly beautiful and skilled at music, the game of Weiyi, calligraphy, and painting. What young man wouldn't desire a beauty like this? I even had inquiries made and learned that her gracious name was Ruru, that her favorite colors were pale yellow and carmine, and that she enjoyed the poetry of Bai Ju-yi. I all but climbed the walls of Li Yue's house myself to write lines of Bai Lutian's poetry on leaves and toss them into the garden under her window. Footnote 3. Bai Ju-yi, courtesy name Lutian, was a popular Tang dynasty poet whose best-known works include Chang-hun-ge, Song of Everlasting Regret. But later, I heard that when young Mistress Ruru learned she was to marry me, she cried her heart out and refused to take her meals. She did not want to wed a treacherous prince like me. Li Yue and his wife reasoned with her, and after several days of persuasion, young Mistress Ruru at last resolved that, for the sake of the people, she would martyr herself and marry into Huai Manor. Of course, I was unhappy to learn of this, but I thought that a mighty prince like me could not long remain on the receiving end of such disdain. Once she married me, she would see how handsome and refined I was, and learn the truth of my loyalty and magnanimity. Perhaps then she would change her mind and be happy to spend her life with me. On our wedding night, I lifted her veil and indeed saw a face of peerless beauty. Her eyelids were lowered. In the candlelight, she looked immensely dignified and refined, but there was no hint of expression on her face. It was as indifferent as a bowl of cold water. I thought she was shy. I took her hand and spoke to her. I said, "Starting now, you and I are husband and wife. You are Princess Huai, Jing Weiyi's lady. You don't have to address me as your highness. You may call me by my given name, Way-yee, or my courtesy name, Chong-joo-in, or you can call me Yilong or Junlong, if you like." I hoped that Junlong, so similar to a word for a charming young man, would make her smile, but her face remained like a bowl of cold water, and the icy hand I held trembled slightly. I bent my head to kiss her lips. She closed her eyes as if submitting to her martyrdom. Tears slowly seeped from the corners of her eyes. I paused midway and did not kiss her in the end, instead sighing and asking her, "Does it pain you so to be touched by me?" She said nothing. Tears formed tracks from her eyes down her cheeks. I felt very gloomy. I did not enjoy taking advantage of others, and I did not lack for bedfellows. Why force myself on a respectable woman? So I said reasonably, "Since you do not want me to touch you, I won't. We can have marital relations when you think it's acceptable." Then I went to my study and spent my wedding night alone. From then on, I still went on treating her as my princess. She did not lack for anything that was rightfully hers. I gave her whatever she wanted. Occasionally, I asked her, "Princess, have you changed your mind?" For the first couple of years, she continued to show me that same face like cold water. In the third and fourth years, she deigned to turn her head away from me with a snort. In the fifth and sixth, she finally managed to glare at me, then bite her lip and look away. Just when I thought I was making progress and that maybe one day she would be willing, she pulled today's stunt on me. I really couldn't understand what the princess was about, nor did I understand how she could now lay all the blame on me and say that I deserted her. Not only has she accused me of being a cut-sleeve, she had even said I was impotent. Could this really be my fault? Temporarily eschewing the cut-sleeve question, I couldn't live like a monk just because she wouldn't have me. Then there really would have been something wrong with me. Just then, the Zongzi by the door spoke up. "Your Highness, I have done no such thing with the princess." The hall once again fell silent. Yuan-yu's snow-bright eyes looked from him to me. The Zongzi's clear eyes were candid. "It is through His Highness's favor that I have found shelter in this household. I would never do such a perverse and unnatural thing, even if I were to die the cruelest death." He closed his eyes. "Your Highnesses may kill or punish me, but I cannot permit Her Highness to slander my integrity like this, nor to disgrace His Highness's reputation." His voice was neither particularly loud nor especially passionate, but for some reason, in the silent hall, there was something uniquely compelling about it. The princess gave another savage laugh, cutting him off. "Integrity? A person like you speaks of integrity? Laughable, truly laughable. Why don't I tell everyone what His Highness brought you here for?" Her words were filled with venomous rancor. I at last had no choice but to speak. "Princess, I engaged Zhong as an accountant out of appreciation for his talents. You ought to know that." "Your Highness, why go on pretending?" the princess said. "Has there ever been anything pure between you and the young men you bring home?" The seated Yuan-yu laughed again. Zhong flushed. At this point, I had no choice but to say angrily, "Princess, how long will these irresponsible remarks continue? When have I ever brought home those I've had impure relations with?" Yuan-yu gave a cough, then broke into hearty laughter. An array of colors bloomed across Censor He's face. He seemed to have gone numb. Seeing that the situation was now completely out of hand, I sighed lengthily. "Fine, princess. You've made your stink and let everyone know everything there is to know. Let us end this here for now. I summoned the guards to lock the princess and Jong in separate retiring rooms for now. As she was dragged away, the princess went on struggling and shouting abuse. When she was gone, her voice still lingered among the rafters. Yun-yu twisted the lid of his teacup. What marvelous luck! I never thought when I brought Censor-He for a visit that I would get to see such a rare sight. Censor-He was silent, shivering. There's no need to fear, Yun-yu said to him, smiling. You and I have witnessed a forbidden scene. Call it an eye-opener. Even if His Highness wanted to silence everyone present today, there are so many people. I'm in it with you, right? All this talk of silencing, who could silence everyone? Before half the day was out, my reputation as an unsurpassed cuckold would probably be known to everyone in the capital. Yun-yu sipped his tea, then clicked his tongue. That little scholar, Jong, is quite dainty, from what I could see. Your Highness's tastes have been getting more and more vegetarian. There was still a bitter taste in my mouth. Suddenly, I was in no mood to explain. Who would believe me if I did? Where my reputation is concerned, no one has ever believed my explanations. Despite being a cut sleeve, I have only ever indulged at pleasure houses. I have never encroached upon men of respectable background. The scholar Jong had 2 months ago been a public letter writer who had fainted in the street from hunger. I took him in out of kindness and arranged work for him doing accounts. I merely thought it a convenient way to do a good deed and had been on the point of forgetting about him altogether. Who could have thought that such an idea would enter the princess's head? His current troubles were my doing, and I truly did not believe that he could have become the princess's lover, much less a father. Yun-yu put down his teacup, rose, and said, Your Highness, if you aren't planning to silence me and Censor-He, we will take our leave of you. I've given you two something to laugh about today, I said with a bitter smile. I won't see you off. Yun-yu joined his hands in a salute and exited sedately with Censor-He. I sat in my chair, feeling a sudden desire for someone to come along with a club and knock me unconscious. The servants surreptitiously cast pitying and speculative glances at me. It was Zhong Xiao, the oldest domestic steward in the manor, who cautiously said, Your Highness, regarding the princess. I pressed my fingers to my forehead. For now, don't let anything get out. Get a doctor to examine Her Highness. An examination showed that the princess was indeed pregnant and nearly 2 months along. Whoever's child it was, it certainly couldn't be mine. And 2 months just happened to be how long Jong had been at the manor. News traveled even faster than I anticipated. That afternoon, a palace eunuch delivered a verbal decree from the emperor summoning me to the palace. The imperial gardens were dense with green shade and blooming with bright flowers. I stepped onto the zigzagging covered walkway above the imperial pond, which was home to colorful carp. These were accustomed to being fed, so when they caught a hint of anyone's approach, they clustered together in a complacent riot of red to pursue the figure above the pond. At the end of the hallway, past 2 shrubs and an unusually shaped stone, inside a palace hall whose door stood half ajar, a bright yellow figure held a book and wielded a brush. A eunuch announced me. At this, I stepped inside and knelt respectfully before the desk. The bright yellow sleeves shifted. The wearer set down the brush and the book in his hands. You're here, Imperial Uncle. Stand up. There's no need for so much ceremony. The Emperor rarely called me Imperial Uncle these days. Normally, he called me Prince Huai, or used my courtesy name, Chhengjun. Each time I was once again addressed as Imperial Uncle, my heart leapt into my throat, because it was certain nothing good would follow. Sure enough, once I had risen, I saw my nephew the Emperor, with his brow faintly furrowed, concern on his august countenance. We hear you have had a family tragedy at home, Imperial Uncle? It does not amount to a tragedy, I responded, only a trifle unworthy mention. Qizhe's brow relaxed. Half seated on his throne, he said, "What punishment are you planning, Imperial Uncle?" The marriage between me and my princess had been arranged by the Empress Dowager and officiated by the Emperor. If I wanted to punish her, I rightly ought to notify the two of them. So I said, "This is a private scandal. I do not wish for it to become public. First, I wish to conduct a thorough investigation at home, then consider what comes next." Chee-juh picked up a memorial to the throne that lay in front of him and flipped through it. "If you don't wish for it to become public, then we will tell the court of the Imperial clan not to involve themselves for now. We hear that the princess has already confessed everything. Are you planning to investigate anew, Imperial Uncle?" "Though I have the princess's statement," I said, "it is still better to look into the facts. I cannot condemn an innocent man based on a one-sided account." Qizhe shut the memorial. "The one-sided account you refer to is presumably the princess's testimony. As for the innocent man, who is he? Everything about the princess and Jong that concerns this matter ought to be carefully investigated. There must be no wrongful accusation. That is my opinion." Gripping the memorial, Qizhe said, "Oh, so the other party is named Jong." The corners of his lips rose in a half-smile. "You will have to be more careful next time you bring someone home, Imperial Uncle." Alas, no explanation was possible, so I offered none. I bowed. "I hear your Majesty's order and shall abide by it. I will be more cautious in the future." Qizhe dropped the memorial back onto the desk. "Fine. Since you want to investigate this matter thoroughly, then you may return home." I knelt respectfully to bid him farewell, then withdrew. On the covered walkway, Yuan-yu was coming my way with another person. We met in the middle. "So His Majesty already knows," said Yuan-yu, smiling. "Your Highness Prince Huai, I must plead my innocence. It is not I who spoke of it. But let me be indiscreet for a moment. Your Highness ought to amend that romantic temperament of yours. Granted, women are unreliable, but from this instance, it can be seen that men are not very reliable either." Smiling brightly, he glanced at the person beside him. "Chancellor Liu, don't you agree?" I looked at the person next to Yuan-yu. With a bitter laugh, I said, "Don't pour salt on my wounds, Supervisor Yuan. Chancellor Liu is an honorable man. Naturally, he cannot speak on a subject like this. Why drag him into it?" Though Yuan-yu was abrasive, he always knew when to stop. He let the matter rest. After exchanging a few casual remarks, we bade each other farewell and parted. The person beside him bowed slightly to me. "Your Highness Prince Huai, I will take my leave." I nodded in return. "Go ahead, Chancellor Liu." As I watched his dark blue figure move gradually toward the other end of the walkway with Yuan-yu, many feelings mingled in my heart. Yet I could not resist taking another look at him as he parted. The whole world knows that I, Prince Huai, Jing Chhengjun, am a cut-sleeve. In fact, it began as a ruse. I wasn't really a cut-sleeve. I thought at the time that it was a burden on the Empress Dowager and my nephew the Emperor to be always worrying about me. Even if I produced an heir, in the best-case scenario, his circumstances would be the same as mine now. I might as well simply let the family line end with my generation. So I pretended to prefer men to calm the minds of the Empress Dowager and the Emperor. Lie enough, and even you may come to believe it. Though I have no understanding how it happened, after too much time spent pretending to be a cut-sleeve, I became one. By the time I discovered that my ruse had become reality, there was no turning back. At some point, a person had entered my heart, and there was no ridding myself of him. Stand too long in the dark, and you begin to love the light. If you can only eat sweets, your mind dwells on salt. I think that is perhaps because of this that I first fell in love with him. I was the court's greatest malignant tumor, and he, its most loyal minister since Li Yue, another spotless pillar in the raging current of filth. At court and among the common people alike, everyone spoke of him as a sagacious chancellor. When we met, I had to let him call me Your Highness Prince Huai, while I called him only Chancellor Liu. Yet his given name, his courtesy name, had been spoken hundreds upon thousands of times in my heart. When would the day come when I would be lost in conversation with him? When would I be able to speak his given name, his courtesy name? Tongyi, Liu Tongyi, Zhansi. Alrighty, everyone. That is chapter 1 of The Imperial Uncle by Feng Gua Guo, and I'm already liking it. The tone of this is super cool. And the crazy thing is, I thought it was going to be weird because it's in first person. The last first person novel that I read actually was by the same author, and that was Peach Blossom Debt. But that was something I was reading in my head, not on my channel. And so reading it in first person felt very, very weird. But right off the bat, as I started reading this, it didn't feel weird to me. So I'm wondering if it's just different because I was reading that one in my head and I'm reading this one out loud. Who knows? Especially with it now being the case where I'm trying to become the characters that I'm reading. And so I already felt, like in tune with this character, but not really because I don't know much about this character that we have. But whoa, I am liking this so much. So before I even express my thoughts on the first chapter, let's just go ahead and go over some of those names that were mentioned. And I'm not sure how many of these names are going to constantly come up, but we're going to go over the ones that were mentioned, like I said. And then from there, we'll see if there are any new names or if I need to go over some names again in the future. So the name mentioned literally on the first page was Mingzong. So again, I'm not going to be doing the tones for these, especially since I'm not quite sure if there is a glossary at the end of this book. Hold on, let me check. Okay, there is, but it's very, very short and it does not contain any of the characters' names really. So, okay. Meeng-dsong. So this is Z-O-N-G. Zhong is going to be like the D-S at the end of kids. It's not Zhong, but Zhong. So Ming-dsong. All right. The next name that was mentioned is the main character, the one that this story is based in as far as their POV. And that is Jing, J, not Q, Jing Cheng-jun. Jing is the surname. Chengjun is the first name. So next we have His Imperial Majesty, or, His Highness, the Emperor. That is going to be Qi, so like CH, but you're going to put the end of your tongue behind the bottom of your teeth and make that same sound and widen your mouth. So instead of just regular ch, it's going to be like ch. Don't know if you can hear the difference, but it is what it is. So Chee-juh. The ZH is going to be the J sound. So J, like, you got punched in the stomach. Qizhe. The other name we can call the main character, Jing Chengjun, is going to be Prince Huai. So just think of the word high, and then you decide to change it to Huai, like high and Y kind of mixing together there. Huai. And then I think he had mentioned to the princess, his wife, that she could call him Weiyi, his given name. So if you have read Mo Zao Zhu Shi, Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, then it's very, very close to Wei-ying. You're just taking the NG off. So instead of Wei-ying, it's Way-yee. Way-yee. After that, we have Yun Tang, and then his son, Yun Yu. So Yun, Y-U-N, is like UN, but you're just going to put it together. Yun. And Tang, well, I think that's pretty easy. So we'll go to Yu. So it's not you, although if you need to pronounce it that way, that's perfectly fine. Just go ahead and say you and you. But Yu is going to be, just say ye, like ye, Y-E, and then form your lips in the O sound or the U sound, double O, and keep that E vowel there. So ye, you is how you're going to say that. Yun, you. Next, so many names. We have Chee-lee. So if you think about chili, the food that we eat here in America that is absolutely delicious. And even though people claim it is a winter food, I eat it any time of the year. Chee-lee. Okay. Last two names. This accountant who was accused of sleeping with our main character's wife is going to be Jong. Very simple, right? And then the last name, the one that was just mentioned on page 16, this last page, is going to be Tong-yee. I think that's pretty easy, but Tong-yee. So those are all of the names that we are going to go over. Those are all the names that were mentioned. There were some names of like dynasties and stuff like that. We don't go over those things. Unless you guys really, really want me to, then you could put that in the comments and we could do that in the future. Anyway, those are all the names that we've gone through. So now we can share my thoughts. So the first thing that I have to say is I really like the tone of our main character, Cheng-Jun. I definitely messed up his name. Cheng-Jun. He has this very... I'm not sure what kind of air it is. It's not holier than thou, because he's definitely not. But he has this very, like, I know who I am. I know who everyone sees me as. And I don't give two craps about it kind of demeanor about him. And he also seems like he's a shameless person as far as his conduct in a specific area. But at the same time, he knows what he does and he knows what he doesn't do. Like, he knows his lines that he won't cross or things that he has not done, which I think is very respectable. You know, even just mentioning, you know, his marriage with his wife, how he heard about her and was even himself trying to woo her, basically. And then he finds out that just because of rumors about the kind of person that he is, being one of the 3 tumors of the country, being known as manipulative and one of the poisons, that she wants nothing to do with him. And this is a reputation that he did not earn, but was just put upon him because of his father, right? And so he was saddened by that, but he was like, okay, hopefully, you know, after her parents convinced her to marry him, he was like, okay, maybe when she sees me, sees that I'm handsome, and then like after I do all these things for her, everything will be fine and she'll fall in love with me. You know, she'll eventually get used to being married to me. And that was not the case. The woman, even on their wedding night, was crying because he was about to kiss her. And so he stopped. And he was like, okay, I'm not going to kiss you. We're not going to do anything tonight. I'm not going to force myself upon you. If you don't want to sleep with me, how about you just tell me when you're ready? And unfortunately, every year that he asked her, the woman was not ready for 5 years. That's awful. So you know what? I don't even blame the guy for going and sleeping around, you know, at the brothels and stuff like that. Because, I mean, if your wife is denying you sex for 5 years, like, what else are you gonna do, you know? Like, okay. Anyway, plus, in this society, it's not like it's necessarily wrong, I suppose. Like, the man didn't even take on a concubine, which was something that was very popular for men to do in this society. Yes, you got your main wife and you got the concubine, but he fully was like, I'm going to honor this marriage with this lady. And she was just like, no, I don't want to, because of rumors. Rumors that, I mean, honestly, if she just like took the time to get to know the man while living in his manor, then she possibly could have seen that, oh, these rumors are not true. But anyway, she didn't give him a chance at all. And already I have a headache with this woman because she came out while he was having guests over and was like, hey, I'm pregnant and it's not yours. Like, who says that? Who does that? And then she's like, it's his over there. And then, of course, that guy's like, what? It was not me. What in the world are you talking about? Like, I wouldn't dare. And then she changes up her story and it was like, because of course he's like, I only hired him as an accountant. So then she changes her story and it was like, oh, you're a homosexual. You slept with him. It's like, wait a minute. So is he the father of your baby? Or is your husband sleeping with him? Like, make up your mind, lady. Which, of course, he's not sleeping with this guy. And so she's just like, it's your fault that I slept with someone else because you're so awful. And he's just like, really? But the thing that I thought was hilarious, which is still up for debate on what's going on, is on page 6 when it gets to this page, because it says that his nephew, Qili, basically was like, you're a pretty awesome person in every way, except for no matter what happens and when it happens, you think that justice is done wrong to you and that it's everybody else's fault and you've been wronged. And that's annoying as hell. And he was like, I think he was wrong to say that. And I don't think he deserved to say that about me. And then he said, whenever anything happens, I first try to find fault with myself. And it is only because I usually find nothing amiss in my own conduct that I go looking for fault with others. That made me laugh so hard, because I was like, oh, so he's right then? I was like, oh my gosh, are you playing the introspective blame game, which I know that's not really a term that exists, but it's a term that I created myself in my memoir. And one of the voices that I have is called the introspective blame game. And it's because, so basically I say that I grew up learning a lot of introspection and always reflecting on things that I did wrong, because that's the way that I was taught. And, you know, when things go wrong, it's like, okay, reflect on yourself, see what you did wrong. But what I realized after so many years is that really, I never truly learned to have real introspection. It's not to say that I didn't have it, but it was always muddied. And I'm just going to find this segment really quickly to express it in the way that I put it there, because I don't know how to do it right now. Okay, here it is. So it just says, on one hand, my mother taught me the importance of introspection. She stressed how necessary it was to examine what I'd done wrong or what I could have done better so I would grow and evolve. But on the other hand, just as much as she taught me to reflect, she taught me how to deflect, to blame everyone else. Later, I've seen this clearly in her marriage. Everything was his fault. Even when she acknowledged the games she was playing, it somehow still wasn't her fault. She wasn't doing anything wrong. And so, growing up, when I felt wronged in certain situations, instead of looking purely at myself, the reflection became distorted. I'd think about what I could have done better, yes, but always with the underlying belief that the person was more in fault. The other person was more at fault. The blame always leaned toward them. My self-reflection became a technicality, not accountability. It would be not, it was my fault, but they were at fault. But here's what I could have done better. Instead of, maybe it was me who turned things south in the first place. So that's what I felt when we first read that little section there. I was like, okay, so is he really a person who doesn't really do introspection for real and reflect on his actions and points the finger at others? And like I said, that's still up for debate, because there are 440 pages for us to read, and we are only on page 16. But after seeing what happened here with the princess, I was like, well, maybe he's right. Maybe he's not making things up, because the woman is crazy. And not only that, not only her making up the story about him, but she decided to slander him, basically, you know, and say, I'm going to make sure that I ruin your reputation. I'm going to tell people that you're impotent. And then, you know, Yun-yu was like, he's not impotent. I know that for a fact because we've gone to brothels together and he's hooked up with a lot of people. So then she was like, well, fine. He's not impotent. He's gay. And it's like, whoa, ma'am, calm down. So anyway, like I said, I'm really, really liking this just thus far. And it's such a change of pace from Astrolabe Rebirth by Fei Tian Yashang, which I'm very happy about, because I prefer ancient Chinese dramas, ancient Chinese readings, just ancient Chinese. Okay, that's where I like to be. Not to say that I don't like modern China. I do. But for entertainment, not necessarily. So anyway, then the last thing that I want to make mention of is we have on page 15 through 16, where he is admitting that he's in love with someone already. And I was like, oh, okay. And it is Chancellor Liu Tongyi. So we don't have a lot on this person, but clearly they are a good person. If we want to relate them to lotuses, like Luo Bingke, they would be a white lotus, I suppose. You know, one of the few people in the court that is actually not corrupt. So I was like, okay, well, we'll see what happens with that, I suppose. But I have to point out this line because it was so good. Y'all know I love it when I come across a good line. And it's on page 16, if you want to look at it, if you have this book. If you can only eat sweets, your mind dwells on salt. I just really liked that. And maybe it's not even that great, but with everything that I read before it, it just kind of pumped it up. But I really like that line. Anyway, that's all I have to say on this. There are a couple of words in here that I definitely had to look up because I was like, what in the heck does that mean? Like sagacious and eschewing and mocking and propitious. I was like, gosh, Danmei always gets me in the dictionary, that's for sure. And voluble. Yes, no, voluble. So I hope you guys' vocabulary has increased as well as mine. And I did not expect myself to talk so much about one freaking chapter. I'm going to shut up now. Please let me know your thoughts and reactions in the comments section. And I will see you all mañana. 明天我爱你们